I wish to push back on you about something. Your appraisal of the current world's geopolitical state and the motivations of the actors within it is quite realist in nature. You often say that if a geopolitical entity can increase its power, then it will. And this seems to be a natural state of affairs in your estimation of the present geopolitical world. You put it in quite amoral terms: those who can do. Yes. This seems to be quite in contrast to the way you describe the historical world. You state that India has had its wealth stolen in the Western powers are the transgressors or otherwise bad moral actors. Can we not, by your currently stated morality, see this in the same light? Was the loss of wealth simply a great geopolitical failure on India's part, according to your previously stated views on geopolitics? See, it's like this: when you study geopolitics, when you analyze geopolitics, when you study the cause and effect chain, when you study the nature of power and the statics and dynamics of power, you have to keep it completely amoral. It has to be cold and precise. You cannot bring in emotions into that analysis, into that study. So that's how you study geopolitics. You approach it dispassionately, without bringing in emotion and without bringing in a certain perspective, a personal perspective. That's the only way you can actually understand and study geopolitics and power, right? So that's why I describe the geopolitical situation, etc., in these dispassionate terms. Those who can will do it. That's the nature of power. Now, when I talk about India, I'm talking from an Indian perspective, right? So that's how it is. I obviously am from a country that has suffered 1,000 years of all of this: invasions, destruction, ridiculous amounts of destruction, horrific genocide that has never been documented. It is not even recognized today. No historian speaks about it, and so on. So that is something that is personal to all Indians. So when you speak about that particular thing, there's going to be some emotion to that. There's going to be a personal perspective that is not going to be the dispassionate, cold perspective that you have when you study geopolitics. So when you talk about the concepts and principles of geopolitics, about the nature of power, about the dynamics of power, and all that, you have to describe all of that in very cold, clinical, amoral terms. But when you talk about history, and who were the transgressors, who are the oppressors, who are the victims, that is going to be looked upon differently. It doesn't mean that one perspective is wrong and one perspective is right. Both perspectives are correct. What happened is, of course, a geopolitical failure. There was a lack of political unity when these Turkic invasions began, and when the British came into India, there was for some time political unity, a single political force in India, the Maratha Empire, but it unfortunately collapsed over time, over a certain period of time. So you can study it completely clinically, completely clinically, coldly, but you can also, from your own perspective, say it how it is. And there were good actors and bad actors, right? I mean, see, it's like this: invasions have happened throughout history, human history. But does an invasion have to lead to cultural genocide and population genocide? Is that necessary? What the British did was that they engineered hundreds of artificial famines. They killed over 100 million Indians. I mean, you can approach that coldly, clinically, from one perspective, that this is what power can do. Yeah, sure. But as an Indian, I'm going to also approach it as an Indian. So, and when India re-emerges as a power, you may see certain action that India will take, maybe to redress certain things. That's what countries do. Let's take a different example. For instance, in the 13th century, was it? In the 12th century, we had the emergence of the Mongol Empire under the great conqueror Genghis Khan. Now he wished to trade with the Khwarazm Empire to the west, to the west of India. So he sent a trade delegation, a bunch of merchants. The merchants were massacred by the Turks who were ruling Khwarazm, and all the goods were stolen. So then Chinggis Khan sent three ambassadors to Khwarazm to ask for justice. So these ambassadors were humiliated, one was beheaded, and then Chinggis Khan decided to retaliate. So he could have approached it clinically, coldly, that this is how geopolitics works, but he decided to take revenge and to protect his reputation. So there is emotion in that too. So it's a mix of all these factors. When you study something, you have to do it dispassionately, but when you react, you can react emotionally. So these are two different concepts, two different things.